say this. This is very interesting that this issue of management or details or the structure of ministry is always one that when I talk to youth workers is a struggle, either because they internally are struggling with it or because their financial person is bugging them again and they're not following through, or they've missed a meeting or something like that. And so we used to do this 5-day intensive, and one of them was called Manage. And we talked about budgeting and management and time management, the stuff we're going to talk about today. And I still remember the one guy in Iowa who signed up for it, and he wasn't there Monday. So I called him at lunch and I said, Jim, what's going on? We're not here. He said, was that this week? I have it in my calendar for next week. I said, you're the reason why we do these things, because we have good intentions. We always find too that this one is one of the smaller ones we ever do. High in the need, low in the interest, because we're too busy to take the class on helping us with busyness. So we're really excited you figured out to join us, and those who will watch later because they're too busy today. We're glad that you're here. I'm Tiger McLuhan. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Ministry Consultants. We are just here to encourage and equip and support every leader, and in particular, those of you who serve in smaller churches. So we try to do everything on a sliding scale, from free to low cost. We love working with all leaders. So we've always loved coming alongside of those of you who are foolish enough to want to spend time sharing Jesus to the next generation. So really glad you're here. Let me pray, and then we'll introduce our guest for today. So God, we're grateful for today and those who have joined us, those who will join us later. Just give us listening ears to hear what you need to teach us about what it is to be a leader at the practical side of life, and help us to apply the things that you want us to apply. We pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Really excited to have Ginny Olson with us. Ginny is a longtime friend of mine. We met years ago when she was, I think it was even right before, but certainly when she went to North Park. I had a contract at North Park, and we just spent a lot of time as she was developing in that role. I loved watching her do the teaching, and so we've just known each other over the years. And when it comes to management, she's got the book, she's got the experience, she is helpful to lots of people. So we're just excited to help you deal with drowning in the details. So Ginny, take it away, my friend.
Thanks, Tiger. Let me share my screen here. We'll get going. There we go. There. Perfect. Yeah, like I said, Tiger said, we've known each other for a long time. He's actually at the very beginning of my journey here. My very first course that I taught at North Park was leadership and management. And I'm like, how do I do this? I am definitely more of a right brain creative. And we were reminiscing earlier that the book I wrote, Youth Ministry Management Tools, came out of a conversation he and I were having as we were crossing a street, and just having a conversation about how all these management books are written by left brain, highly logistic, type A people. And it's like, nope, we need something for youth ministry. And so that was kind of the genesis of Youth Ministry Management Tools. So I say all that because in youth ministry, we are often very people-oriented, relationally driven, and these are skills that anybody can learn. And so, I'd much rather have a youth pastor who is highly relational, and it's like, okay, the skills, the administrative skills, these you can learn. So doesn't surprise me it's a smaller group. These are like the Brussels sprouts of youth ministry. It's like, I know they're good for me, but there's a couple of people who absolutely love Brussels sprouts. A lot of people are like, only if grandma makes them. So just, yeah, if you like it, if you don't, these are some skills you can learn. So, okay. Let's see here. There we go. So a couple things to think about with this session. Set realistic goals for yourself. Where are you at in this season of life? Some of you are co-vocational and you're working 2, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. And so maybe there's just a couple things that's like, okay, I'm going to focus on program mapping. I'm going to focus on finances. What's realistic for this season of life? for how you're wired. We are in the midst of the Advent season, so this is a really busy time in churches. So, take that into consideration. I would encourage you to take notes, because there's something when you take notes that really drives the points home and it helps you remember certain things. That being said, I will also be glad to send you a PDF of the slides. So don't feel like you're scrambling or need to take a screenshot of every screen that goes by. Glad to send you the PDF of the slides later today. And then I'd encourage you to suspend judgment. We tend to say, oh, I'm disorganized. I, can't organize my way out of a wet paper bag. Suspend that judgment, because what happens is when we make those judgment statements, we stop learning. And I would encourage you to keep learning this stuff along the way. Keep, build a foundation, then keep building in your organization foundation. So, okay. So let's start in the beginning. I love this. We see God as both creator and organizer, and that's us in youth ministry. We create, we have all sorts of ideas, but then God, took it and said, okay, on the first day, this is what's going to happen. On the second day, on the third day. And I think it's also very important to remember that on the seventh day, God rested. And in ministry, we can keep pushing and pushing and never stop and pause and rest, especially if you're a volunteer youth pastor or a co-vocational person. You've got to have that time of creating, organizing, and rest. So looking at the Old Testament, we do see some administrative qualities there. The manager, that like Genesis 39:4, Joseph was a manager in control of the master's house. It was really seen as a role of importance and respect and trust. So sometimes in youth ministry, we downplay the role of administration and management, and to see it as, nope, it's really a position of respect. So it's someone, if you go into the Hebrew, it's someone who manages the affairs and activities of the organization. The administrators are often, that term is often translated as priest. So this is holy calling to organize and know what's going on and organize your people, your families, your students, your ministry. So Moses, if you want to take a look at Deuteronomy 1:8 through 18, great example of how organizing people really helps. He was heading towards burnout. His father-in-law said, there is, too heavy of a burden for me to carry alone. And his father-in-law was seeing what was going on. And it's like, organize the people so you don't kill yourself. So as we look at the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 12, talking about the different gifts of the Spirit, different gifts that we have, apostles, prophets, administration is in there. It's another way to look at it in Greek is kubernesis, governing, which means to pilot or steer a ship. And this is what you're doing when you're managing the details. So you're not drowning, you're steering the ship in the way you want it to go. And all that steering stuff usually down below the water, so nobody really sees it, but you are moving the ship in the direction you want it to head. So curious, throw this in the chat or unmute yourself and say, why do youth workers have the reputation of being unorganized? What do you think? I'm going to ask you, Tiger, to break the ice. What do you think? Why are people
The reputation is there because far too many have demonstrated it.
Yeah.
Wonderful people, well-intentioned, they love Jesus, and they get things in late. They have their finance report on a napkin in their pocket, and so it sadly it's because over the years the reputation is somewhat earned. That doesn't mean every one of us is, but I think a lot of us, this is not our deal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anybody agree or disagree? You can unmute and tell me what you think.
And I'm seeing in the chat, overfull plates, relationships over management, overworked.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anybody else? Time needs to be building relationships. Yep. We got kids in, crisis. Priority often relationships over management, also from the chat. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Here's a reality. And we are, as youth workers, spiritual directors, counselors, curriculum writers, preachers, teachers, EMTs, recreation directors, strategic planners, administrators, custodians yet again, event planners, experiential educators, accountants, family therapists, social workers, fundraisers, risk managers, team leaders, pastors, fast food chefs. We know how to turn Taco Bell into a delightful feast. I would say take a screenshot of this and go into your next meeting with your board and say, you know what, I think I need a raise or at least more vacation time. What else would you guys add to this as youth workers? What else are we? It's always hard when people are doing.
Interpreters and mediators.
Oh, say more about being an interpreter.
Helping kids understand adult speak,
Yep.
helping parents understand youth speak.
Yep. Yep. That's great. Financial managers, social media managers. Oh, those are good. Yep.
That's great.
These are really helpful. We just, so cut yourself some slack, folks. If you are drowning in details, you've got a lot coming at you. And so understand that. So as youth workers, we are dreamers. We love to dream. And so when we dream, our dreams are often like this. This is like the most expensive house on the market. It's in LA, hence the palm trees. And I forget how much this was being listed for at one time, but it came with the cars. It came with a staff of 5 full-time people. It actually had its own candy room. So not just theater, it had its own candy room. So when we dream our ministries, it's like, oh, we could do all this. Here's what management is. It's the studs. So if to get to this kind of dream, you need to have this infrastructure. But here's the thing, you never see the infrastructure because it's covered with the drywall and the glass and the paint and everything else. If we don't have the good infrastructure, our dream turns out looking like this. So it's really important that even though nobody might see this glamorous job of doing an Excel spreadsheet, it really helps to have that strong infrastructure. So we're going to take a look at 3 organizational areas: organizing and productivity, program mapping, and money. So we're gonna, my aim is to be done with this portion at quarter till, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, at the last 15 minutes, but also feel free to put questions in the chat. So we've got people monitoring it. So organizing and productivity. Just going to throw a couple of tools at you. I told Kenna that I have calendar envy, looking at her great calendar in the background. That some of you are still you're tangible, physical, kinesthetic. It's like, I want paper. I want something on the wall. Some of you are totally digital. I'm a hybrid. I like both. So on the wall, right in front of my screen, I've got a 9-month calendar. I'm moving to a full year and in 2024. So I can see from January through December, what does my year look at like? And I can look up and go, you know what? Yes, I have this weekend free, but I've got a major event the week before, and I've got another major event 2 weeks later. That's something that looking at my digital calendar doesn't show me. And that way also other staff people can come in my office and go, oh, that's why she's a little stressed. We need to go buy her coffee because she's got a major event coming up next week. It just helps everybody look at it from a glance. Bullet journaling is another suggestion. Some youth pastors have found it really helpful. Day timers, month at a view, year at a view. So if you tend to be a physical, you need kinesthetic touch, write it down. These are great suggestions. If you've got other suggestions, please throw them in the chat. Digital, we're going to take a look at some apps that will help you. So as you organize yourself, let's look at that first before we look at organizing the team. Here's just a bunch of different ones. Most of them I have tested out. Some I have not, but come highly recommended. So Rescue time really gives you a good read on how you're spending your time. It allows you to block off time and go, okay, why do I feel like at the end of the day I'm not getting anything done? It gives you kind of a reading. Here's how you spent it. I personally use Kanban Flow. It's digital to do, and you can set a timer. So it's like, okay, this task I thought would take me 30 minutes. It took me an hour and a half. I know next time to plan that much time. It also, you can attach a Pomodoro timer to it. If you're familiar with Pomodoro, you work, I think it's like 23 minutes and then you get a 5-minute break. And so it's that sense of work hard, take a break, work hard, take a break, and it keeps your creativity going. Any list is great because you can share your list with others. So if you're planning a big event and you've got a dozen stores you need to go to buy stuff, you can just start making the list and send it out to volunteers. They can help with the shopping. Freedom will actually lock your computer down. So that way, if you're going, I've got to do this budget report, you can set the timer in Freedom and it locks you out of any kind of web browser and just allows you to work on the document. A lot of writers use Freedom. In the upper left-hand corner is that little plant. This is called, I think it's called Forest. I've just blanked on it. It's about phubbing, Phubbing, and that is phone snubbing, if you're not familiar with that term. We tend to be really guilty of this as youth pastors, is we're in a meeting with a student or a parent and our phone buzzes and we pick it up and look at it. Research has shown that even having your phone on the table reduces the depth of the conversation. So I would encourage you to model just putting your phone away. So what this little app does, it's a little plant that grows, and the longer you don't pick up your phone, the more it grows into a tree. As you pick up your phone, the tree dies. So it's just kind of a good visual of, how much am I picking up my phone, and am I staying engaged in the moment with people? The little one at the top, that's kind of a squiggle, the gold box, that's Mile IQ. That just keeps track of your mileage. Your accountant will love you if you get that app. When it comes time to do your taxes, it can run a quick report and go, here's how much of my time was ministry that was not reimbursed. It's great. So those are personal apps. Organizing.
Jenny, real quick, how does it know when you're in the car, the ministry related versus personal? Do you have to enter something as you get in the car?
You could just got to do swipe right, swipe left for personal or ministry.
Oh.
And it allows you to say, this was a meeting, this was an event. So at the end of the day, or we'll do it at the end of the week or even at the end of the month sometimes and go, yep, here's where my trips were. So yeah, there's some great apps showing up in the chat too. Here's organizing your team. Dropbox, great for sharing documents. They're doing more and more to be able to collaborate together, being a little bit more of a competition with Google Drive. Google Drive is kind of the free go-to, really helpful on working docs together. I find it really frustrating when it comes to organizing files and finding things. So Doodle is great if you're trying to figure out you've got your team, when can we get together? You send a doodle out with times that are available and you see where can the most people meet. Microsoft has something similar attached to Outlook, but anyway, Asana, Slack, Basecamp, Trello, all really good for team projects. It keeps communication out of your email, keeps it focused in the app. So it's not like, well, I lost this email. It's like, nope, everything is in one location. I find that really helpful if I'm working with people remotely on a project. So Jim, you've got your team together for powder burn, sorry. Slack would be a great tool because you've got people from all over that are working on a central project. So those are just things. Again, if you have others, please throw those in the chat. These are some communication ones: Remind, GroupMe for apps for sending out text messages. the one in the lower left-hand corner, blanking on the name. I'll get that in the notes to you, but it tells you whenever your church or your ministry shows up in the news or social media, anywhere online, it just keeps an eye on it, similar to Google News alerts. So if your church, maybe something controversial is going on, put that out there, see kind of what the feed is on what's the buzz on your organization. Orange has got a lot of great tools for communicating with your ministry people, your volunteers, your parents. That does come at a price. So, sorry, Mention is the one I was talking about. Where are you at on the web? So Remind, Mighty Networks, we're using that. I'm affiliated with the Covenant. I work for the Northwest Conference of the Covenant. We're using Mighty Networks to build our social networks and deliver learning, education, communication. So, poof. Okay, to talking fast. These are some others. They're going to look really familiar. MinHub Planning Center, Breeze, others where churches are moving now to some really good communication hubs where they can get the word out. They're pricey, but it can be worth it because people actually know what's going on. So let's take a look at short range productivity. Gina Tripati says it this way: the first thing you accomplish at work sets the tone for the rest of the day. So in light of that, I would say don't open your email, don't text, don't open social media for the first hour of your day. It's really tempting when you sit down to go, okay, what are the emails that came through? What's going on Instagram, on TikTok? And all of a sudden, you're spending a ton of time with stuff that isn't productive. And you get done with the morning and you're like, what did I do? Because all it did is generate more responses back at you. Let that go. Just develop the habit, first hour, not turning any of that on. In fact, let me jump to this one. I have started doing this probably over a year ago now, and it has been a game changer for me. It's John Brandon, Christian guy. He wrote this book, The 7-Minute Productivity Solution. And he does it where he actually clocks it out. Everybody says, well, don't do this in the morning. Spend time reviewing your schedule. He's like, he runs you through. Here's what you do: minute 1, minute 2, minute 3. So before you start, you prepare. Minute 1, you clear your head. Minute 2, you breathe a little, breathe deeply. Minutes 3 through 6, you're really writing notes. What's something encouraging I got from my devotional? What do I feel like God is saying to me for today? What's something hopeful? And then minute 7 is I'm going through crossing out stressors, circling encouraging things. What is my purpose? How is what I'm doing? Does that fit into my larger purpose call in life? And it just is this chance to focus. And I find when I do this, one, mentally, I'm in a much better place, but I'm also a lot more productive because I feel like I'm not just doing mindless tasks. I see how these tasks fit into the larger purpose. Couple other things. If you are not a morning person and you're trying to develop a good routine, the Morning Sidekick Journal, you can get it on Amazon. Really practical way of getting a good, solid morning routine. John Acuff has some great things that he's doing right now on preparing for the new year with All It Takes Is a Goal. So I find his podcast to be really helpful. It's short, it's useful, practical. So just those are some suggestions personally. I would say plan for interruptions too. So in youth ministry, we have a lot of them. And so it's important to say, I'm going to respond rather than react. So we always have that, that one parent who's like, I have to see you right now. And to have the mentality of like, you know what, your crisis does not mandate my crisis. So how do I step back instead of always be in reaction mode, step back and go, wait a sec, what's going on? So to ask, what's this meeting about? Can I negotiate it? Can we do it move it to a different time? And then also to plan an exit strategy from any like long meetings or interruptions going, okay, let me give you an example. I loved teaching college students But I found that some of them, all they wanted to do is sit and talk, which is great at certain points. It's not great when you've got finals to grade. So I learned that I would stand up and go to them, like they would be out kind of in our common area, and I would do a standing meeting. And that meant the meeting wouldn't last more than 5 to 10 minutes. I knew if the student would sit down, it would be a 20 to 30-minute meeting. So just a very easy strategy going, okay, yes, I still want to care for you. I also realize I've got pressing deadlines. That was my exit strategy. Simple things like that. How do I manage my time? Still care, but manage it well. So, okay. You guys are listening really fast. This is great. Let's go to, yeah.
Someone has said too, yeah, we don't do phone calls quite as much as we used to with all the other stuff. But when you do, someone years ago taught me to stand up when I was on the phone. That was back in the day when the phone was on the desk, but even a cell phone, you tend to be more efficient when you're standing on the phone versus sitting. And I found that to be true. So a little thing, very similar idea.
That's a great suggestion. Anything like that kind of changes your framework and keeps you moving along. So Rebecca said this, I have 10 minutes. I'd love to talk, but that way it sets expectations. That's a great suggestion. So people know it's not like you're being rude at the end of 10 minutes. You let them know this is how much time I have to give you. Perfect. Okay, let's move on to program mapping, another area where we can drown in the details. So program mapping is really how do you determine a healthy rhythm for you in the ministry? And healthy is a key word here. Something where you thrive, where you are ready to do it for the long haul. When I started in ministry, I really, really burned out. My last year at that church, I realized I was home, I think 5 nights the whole year, and that included Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. I was just pushing myself, internal expectations, external expectations, just burnt out. Next ministry had my radar up, and our ministry met on a Saturday morning. We were done by 1 on Saturday. We didn't come back in the office till Tuesday. I felt really lazy the first year or so. But what I realized is these people had been doing ministry for decades, and they had a really healthy rhythm. They were marathoners, they weren't sprinters. And so that's what you need to think about when you're doing program mapping. So a couple of things, long-term planning, 18 months ahead, develop a vision, develop a framework. I'm going to assume that you know what your framework is at a school year. Some school contexts are they're 3 months on, 1 month off. So figure out what your context or your cultural context is, and really, really be aware of what are the expectations. So lots of questions, lots of conversations when you do program mapping. Don't start with the calendar. Start with questions. So as you're kind of laying this all out, begin with these questions. Here's just some examples. Find out what are your expectations for the youth ministry in the upcoming year. Talk with your lead, or if you're working for a nonprofit, your exec director. What do you expect? If you think at the end of this year the youth ministry is thriving, describe to me what's going on. And that lets you know, do they expect numbers? Do they expect depth? Do they expect lots of activities? What are they expecting? And these are some of the specific hopes and expectations. If you report to a CE board, ask them the same thing. Get them to articulate what they are. And I would encourage you to have it in writing. And so you can go back. So if at any point there are pinches in communication, they're like, well, you're not doing what we agreed on. It's like, well, actually, here's the document that we talked about. What does a healthy ministry look like to you? Any concerns? And I would talk to some of your key volunteers and maybe some parents that are involved. Anything from this last year we need to talk about? Anything you haven't told me? Anything I need to be aware of that maybe somebody's not telling me? So I'm in Minnesota. We have a culture. Minnesota Nice is famous. You really have to push people to critique. And so trying to make a safe place, going, no retribution. I just need to know because this will help me as a leader. Do your homework. What are the priorities in your community? Events. I had planned a youth ministry, youth pastor get together first weekend in November. I'm like, let's go to this conference. It's, in this part of, it's just over the border in Canada. Nobody could make it because it's beginning deer hunting season. I had totally forgot that started at the beginning of November. So you need to find out, what are the events? Sporting events. Again, Minnesota, you don't plan stuff in March because you have the state hockey tournaments and state basketball tournaments. So your denomination, and talk to your students. What are the key things that they do not want to miss, especially if you're new in a community? Also think about, what are the rhythms of your year? And this really is contextual, depending on how your church runs. And in one of the ministries I was involved in, fall was our ramp up time. So we took the summer off. So we really built towards building our volunteers starting in August, students, school, everything in the fall was a lot of energetic, connecting activities, trying to help our volunteers build relationships with their small groups. Who's in my small group? Who are their family members? And then realizing about December, the rhythm changes, and we said winter is going deep. So don't carry the same energy into winter that you had in the fall. Shift your energy. Really go deep. Who are the students that consistently show up, who are curious, who want to go deeper? Then plan events, training series that really helps you drive deeply into the lives. Starting about March, usually after spring break, things picked up like recitals, concerts, tournaments, all of that. And we said, don't worry about if you don't have the same level of depth with your kids. So build on these relationships, show up at their events, maybe spend some more time with families. So summer, I've been in ministries where summer was our heavy duty relationship time. Other ministries, we took the summer off and we did camp for a week, and that was it. We gave everybody a break. Really, really depends on your context and expectations. So I got to say, when we took the summer off, our volunteers were ready to come back in August. If I had asked them in June, will you sign up? They would have said, nope, we are exhausted. By end of August, they were like, I can't wait to be back. So think about rest and Sabbath for your leaders as well. Okay. After you're done asking the questions, call for a leadership program mapping meeting, begin with the holidays. And I would say do this as a group so you have group buy-in. And then your weekly programs, don't forget your sacred cows. A rookie mistake is to kill sacred cows. We're not going to do that mission trip because I don't see the purpose of it. We're not going to go to that denominational youth event. I'd rather go to this event that I've been a part of for 5 years. Yeah, that denominational youth event has been part of your church for decades. So make sure you know what are the sacred cows. And also make sure you're scheduling new initiatives as you program. I'd encourage you to develop a planning grid. We tend to have a bias of how we're wired, what interests us. So look at all the events and activities you've got and color code them and go, wow, we have a ton of stuff in this aqua outreach blue. We have nothing with mental health, but our kids are really lonely. We're seeing a lot of depression. We need to start shifting where our emphasis is. We have some strong leaders among our kids. Let's start adding some more leadership development and cut back on the purple social development this year. Just a creative way to take a look at your program. Quarterly planning. This just kind of gives you some deadlines to look for. Parents plan a year sometimes out. So you need to be figuring out when do I need to get information to them. You've got one coming up for your spring. I would say January 15th at the latest, you need to be getting information on stuff out to them. For summer, they need to know. I would say even April 15th might be too late in some contexts. We have a big event with all our churches in August. It's our big middle school event. Literally while the event was going on in August, I got a text from a youth pastor going, do you have next year's dates yet? So they had parents who wanted to make sure they got it on their calendar. So a year ahead, here's your big ticket items: mission trips, conferences, concerts, your budget, any teaching series. This will be helpful when you can see it smaller, but Ryan Campos put out a whole spreadsheet. Here's how he does his speaking series for a year. And that way you're looking at, okay, are there videos? Are there speakers? Are there events that can fill in, emphasize, elaborate on any of my speaking stuff? Year out, also volunteer training, student leadership development, meetings, events. About 6 months out, any kind of low cost events, you're good. So, sorry, 3 to 6 months. Sorry, that's what should be the 3 to 6 months. Got to mix up there. And then always make sure you're evaluating. So you're not just going from event to event to event, but you're saying, wait a sec. If we look at that, what do we add? What do we keep? What do we toss? What do we tweak? And I found this to be really helpful because it's keeps it from being personal, where people are like, I hated the speaker. You should have gotten this done. You didn't get the communication done. It's the evaluations, we hesitate to do them because they can feel like personal attacks. This keeps it from being personal. We're looking at the event, the teaching series, the retreat, and putting it out here going, okay. And I just send a text to students, to volunteers, and say, shoot me a quick text. What did you think? Where do we need to change it? So, okay, let's take a look at finances in our final stretch here. Luke 14. Yeah, don't begin until you count the cost. And this is budgeting and finance. Do we have enough money to finish this? And that's really important. Sometimes it's like, ooh, depending on what you grew up with. And here's the question: what was your attitude towards money? Where did it come from? That our family background really can fit into our ministry assumptions about money. If money was talked about easily and freely and there was a transparency, budget season doesn't usually probably scare you. If that was we don't ever talk about that, that can, or we're always pinching pennies, that will affect how you look at ministry budgeting. So do some self-reflection. How did you grow up? What were you taught about money? What is, also take a look at the story your ministry budget is telling. If you were only to look at your budget, what does it tell you about your priorities, where you want to grow, what's important? So yeah, maybe give it to a friend who is not part of your ministry and say, take a look at this. What do you think our ministry is about? What do you think our priorities are based on just purely the budget categories and the amount of money we're putting towards each line item? So really interesting process. So let's take a look at how do you create a budget? First, you begin to ask questions similar to program mapping. As you're going through this, what are the questions? These are just some examples. Again, these will show up in the PDF, but just what's the area we're located in? Do our kids have money, or do we need to raise money? Is our socioeconomic population reflected in our group? So where does a church invest its resources? What does the church value? Sometimes the church really values music, and so they spend a ton of money towards their choirs and their concerts. Is that expected that the youth ministry has a choir and that you do performing? Maybe it's missions. But what does the church value? Is that expected that you reflect that? What's the church's spending philosophy? Are they okay having a deficit? Do they expect to go in debt? Are they spending money on an endowment? And it's like, well, our income technically falls short by 150,000, but we have this endowment that we're pulling on. It's like, ooh, that can be challenging. Let me just put it that way. Take a look at the annual budget. And where did the money come from? Are there a couple of donors? Are there a lot of people who are invested in giving? That can help you gauge the health of the church as well as the youth ministry. and take a look at the percentage. Is youth ministry just a small part of the budget, or is it a significant part? So it's one thing, you can be interviewing for a youth ministry position and they said, oh, this is a priority. And you look at the budget and go, we are 3% of the budget. It's that really tells the true story on how important they think it is. So where's the money gone? What has the past been? Ask questions. Take your your church administrator out, or the head of your finance committee. Tell me, what have you approved? Where have there been pinch points? Questions, how important is context? This kind of lets you know, do you have money for a youth room to develop an atmosphere for the events you do? What do you need to do to make the ministry student friendly? So what I'm finding is we have a number of people on church boards and finance committees who grew up in the church, and they're still measuring things by their boomer. And I can say this because I'm a tail end boomer. Well, this is what we used to do back in the day. And I would say even Gen Xers, you need to educate. This is where, Jan, when you said we're translators and interpreters, this is now what students need. And so be able to make your case. This is what we need. So other questions, fundraisers, have you inherited any debt? So you'll get these on the PDF, but there's some things, just a lot of questions. Key one, when do you turn your budget proposal in? And so ask that. If you're brand new in a church, that's one of the first questions you ask. So are changes allowed? Tons of questions. So yeah, you need to buy your administrator coffee and just take them out and ask these. So second, really review your mission, your vision, your value statements. Your budget needs to flow out of these. Don't start first going, okay, we've got this much money. Now, how do we plan? It's like, no, we are called to do this. We really feel like we're going to need to do outreach. Or we really need to help students. They are dealing with loneliness and depression and mental health. This year, we desire to be a safe place where students can process and find friendship and community. Okay. That's where you start. Then you build your budget. So you create broad categories. These are just some possible line items. Now, here's the difference. I want to show you this example. You're saying outreach is a priority. So you're putting percentages. 25% of our budget then is going to go to outreach events. In a teams ministry, and what a teams ministry is like we have a drama team, we have a worship team, we have a quiz team. We have, and so it's not like we all gather and do a big youth group on Wednesday night. It's like, no, when you come to our church, you're on a team as a student. I've seen a number of churches like that. If that's that, then you're going, okay, for our STEP team, our sports team, tech team, we're putting the majority of our money towards that, 25%. And so you can see how, depending on what your mission and vision are, that's where you differentiate with your percentages. Okay. Here's an example of a budget. Let me get out of the way, move my head out of here. This is just an example from 2020, how they did it: income, expense, and then total budget. You'll get a copy of that on the slide. It's a little bit more creative than an Excel spreadsheet. This would be a great format to present to your committee, your church board, and this is an example of how our budget lays out. Okay. So step one, you're categorizing. Do we have separate line items, or do we separate junior high, middle school, junior high? Or do we just say, no, one line item for retreats? You get to choose. How much is going to be paid for by participants? Again, this goes with your socioeconomic evaluation of your community. And also think about, do your volunteers pay? And my philosophy is they're already volunteering. They're giving up personal time. We figure out a way to pay for our volunteers to go. So think about how much money you have coming in. Does the church designate it? Participant fees? Do you have a memorial gift? how many fundraisers. And I would be cautious with your fundraising. You are hired to be, whether you're volunteer or paid, your role is to be a youth pastor. A youth ministry person is not to be a fundraiser. So be careful that you're not spending the majority of your time raising money. So step 4, breakdown of line items, specific events. And depending on your board may say, you know what? No, we need to know what exactly you're spending this $900 on. Be ready with that. Be proactive. Oops. Accountability. Don't mix your personal and ministry money. Don't use a personal money app. So don't have people saying, oh, I'll send you the Venmo and then you'll pay the church. Just don't step out of that. Develop a no cash policy. Students are aware that so many ministry leaders have been, are ethically just not doing great. And so if you don't want any shadow of doubt that you're misusing funds, you want to be a person of integrity. You want students to be able to go, yeah, I trust this person. So I actually would say, if you could get somebody else to handle any kind of money, that would be great. My co-author, Mike Work, when we were doing youth ministry management tools, he tells a story of, he was collecting money for a retreat, and he heard 2 high school boys standing off to the side talking, and they were joking, and they said, I wonder what Mike is going to do with all that money. And he said, I realized in that moment that even though they were joking, there was a kernel of suspicion in there. And at that point I said, nope, I have nothing to do with money. I don't ever, I want to be above reproach. So, there we go. And the last one is to celebrate. Make sure as you're doing all these details and everything else that you pause and go, wow, I'm making progress. We are making progress as we put budgets together and program mapping and organizing our ministry, that you actually pause and say, okay, we're doing this. So, okay, I have talked a long time. So,
Wow, that was like drinking from a fire hydrant. Holy moly.
well, it's drowning in details, right?
At the beginning, I thought, oh, yeah, we'll just take some notes and, listen to it. But now I'm like, every one of us needs that PDF. Holy cow.
I'm
And,
sorry. Yeah, you guys got
no,
a whole
that's-
day's worth of teaching in one
That's
40
great. That's great. But, and each of us are in different contexts. So do you have any particular questions that you'd like to throw into the chat, or we're in a small enough group, just unmute, ask questions, and see if we can solve your particular problem before we are done here. Anybody have a question that you want to ask on any of the drinking from the fire hydrant we just did?
They're all in shell shock.
No,
I'm trying to process. It's like,
Yeah,
how
right,
did
right.
I process that last 45 minutes? I kind of lost it in there
yeah,
somewhere.
I know. It'll be a lot of work at home to look through the PDF. And remember, some of you are in churches where your budget is smaller, but the principles are still the same. It may not feel like you're looking at 17,000 or 50,000, but I would encourage you to be thinking that it's still a good start with the questions first rather than the details. And so many churches have the idea that take last year's budget and just roll it over next year, or tweak it, you get 3%. And that often doesn't go to the vision. And that's your job. So just be willing to adapt this stuff. But any thoughts or questions that you guys have?
I think my favorite trick, I fake being good at details. I am not naturally good at details, but I pretend to be. But one of my tricks is befriending the bookkeeper, befriending the administrator, getting in really tight with them, because then they can help you walk through these. They can answer your dumb questions. They can kind of hold your hand until you're a little more confident in these steps. I had a bookkeeper that I was so bad at receipts. She would plant chocolate in my receipts box as a little surprise when I finally would sit down to do my receipts as an incentive. So to get on her good side so that as I'm growing in this, that, she doesn't want me fired.
Yeah. Yeah, often that's a good skill for any of the what we might call support people on your church, whatever that is, the secretary, the administrative assistant, the custodian. A good youth worker needs to have good relationship with all those people because you interact with all of them at some point. And sometimes they see the dark side of your ministry, the dirty side, the messy side. And so if you get to be in good with them, yeah, Rebecca, you're right. It'll help you because they've got some skills they can help you with.
Yep.
I'm old school. I love Excel spreadsheets now. I used to hate all that junk, but I just love when you can organize and get it down and get the formula together so you can change numbers and play with it. And when you did 25% this and 30, I think it's a tool that still feels old school for a lot of people, but I still find it the most helpful in terms of budgeting for sure.
Yeah, it is. There's some great templates out there. There's one that I found for events that lets you know, you just write in your expenses and you can do anticipated, and it shows you on a pie chart too where you're spending this stuff. And I just use a template. There's no way I could have created that, but I do a plug and play. So Jan, sorry, I didn't mean to step on
No,
you.
I was just gonna say this little trick helped me a lot. I carry this little envelope in my purse now. And so all of the work receipts go into here so that when it's time to do the expense report, I don't have to go through all of the receipts in my purse to figure out which one were work receipts and which one was, my own Costco run, right? So I just keep a little tiny envelope that I got from Office Depot in my purse, so they all go there. Our accountant was so happy. It's like, all of your receipts are here. I said, I know.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
I would suggest Expensify too as an app where you just take a picture of the receipt and it can actually run a report. And so after a conference, I sent our business administrator, here's my report of all my expenses. Here's the photo of all the receipts. And she's like, this is fabulous. So anything that runs a report for me, I'm happy with. So other tips, tricks, apps?
I have a feeling a lot of people will be looking at that PDF when doing homework because that's where you'll have time to circle the one that you want to work on.
And that's it. It's to don't drown in this. Just say this is, I'm choosing program mapping. Now is a great time to do program mapping as you're looking at the summer and even into next fall.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just a reminder, my name is Rebecca. I'm on staff with Youth Ministry Consultants. We have coaches that want to walk with you through these process. And so if you have identified a couple of things that you want to grow in the new year, we'd love to get you connected with a coach that can help you have those conversations, give you tips and tricks, and help you move toward those goals. So you can email me, you can go on our website. We'd love to get you connected. The best part is it's in your budget. We do a lot for free. We do a lot for reduced fees. We just want you supported, and however we make that happen is what we're willing to do. So I put a couple links in the chat. The first one is a survey on today's webinar. We love your feedback. We love to know what topics you're wondering about, what things you want to see in the future. So if you can take just 2 minutes and fill that out, it really helps us as we plan future webinars. I thought it was great. I took so many screenshots and I'm looking forward to that PDF. So thank you, Ginny, for all of that wonderful content. And then the link
I would mention that that's true for those who are watching it later. Still click the link and give us the feedback, not just for those who are live. So
yep. And then the next link is for our next webinar coming up on January 11th. This is a topic that has come up so many times. How do you lead change in a church? Churches are unique animals when it comes to leading change. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of tradition, there's a lot of just different voices that come into the mix. And so we're going to have a time dedicated to talking about how do we lead through this well? How do we look at all the nuance of being in a church and avoid some of these common pitfalls that we all kind of stumble into? So that registration is open. If you used a code to attend today's webinar, it will work for that one. So go ahead and sign up. We would love to have you there. Ginny, do you have any closing thoughts?
I'm excited to hear Tiger talk on that, because that, as I work with youth pastors, that's my role. That is the big thing, is how do I lead from the second chair? How do I lead change? Especially in an established system. That's a huge challenge. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Right. Well, we appreciate you, Ginny, so much, and all of this wonderful insight. Hopefully we are not going to make our bookkeepers mad this year. We're going to grow and get better at the details. But thank you all for being here. We hope to see you in January, and have a very Merry Christmas.
Amen.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you.
You guys.
Thanks for coming. Talk to you.